Have you ever felt completely exhausted, yet nothing in your life seems to move forward? In a quiet village, there lived a young farmer named Elias. Every night he worked until his back ached and his hands were raw, but his life looked exactly the same as the year before. One evening, as the sun went down, Elias kicked over an empty water bucket and shouted, "Why do I work so hard if nothing ever changes?" Elias owned only a small piece of land on the edge of the village. Every morning before sunrise he went out to plow the dry soil, plant seeds, and carry water from the well. But his crops grew thin and weak, and his harvest was never enough to pay all his debts. Across the road, his neighbor's fields were bright green and full. The neighbor had a strong barn, healthy animals, and sacks of grain stacked high. Day after day, Elias watched this from a distance. He began to tell himself that fate was unfair, that the land he received was cursed, and that nothing he did would ever be enough. The more he compared himself to his neighbor, the heavier his heart became. Slowly, he stopped believing that his effort mattered. His body still worked, but his mind had already given up. One evening, as Elias kicked his empty bucket again, an old shepherd passed by with his flock. The shepherd had deep lines on his face and calm eyes that seemed to have watched many seasons come and go. He stopped and asked gently, "Why are you so angry at an empty bucket, son?" Elias sighed and poured out his frustration. He complained about his poor land, his bad luck, his neighbor's success, and how hard he worked for nothing. The old man listened without interrupting, then picked up the bucket and placed it back in Elias's hands. "This bucket," the shepherd said quietly, "was never meant to stay empty. Tomorrow, before sunrise, carry it to every house in this village. Ask for nothing but water. Take whatever they pour into it, and while you walk, do not speak a single word of complaint." Elias frowned. The task sounded useless and strange, but something in the shepherd's calm voice made him curious, so he finally nodded. The next morning, before the first light touched the fields, Elias started his walk. At the first house, an old woman opened the door. Without asking questions, she filled his bucket with water and showed him how she collected rain in large clay pots, so she never ran out in the dry season. At the second house, a young man added more water and explained how he protected his seedlings with simple shades made from old cloth, so the sun would not burn them. At the third house, a family shared a little water and showed him how they used kitchen scraps and leaves to make rich, natural fertilizer without spending any money. House after house, the same thing happened. People poured water into his bucket and, along with it, poured small pieces of knowledge into his mind. By the time the sun was high, the bucket was heavy in his hand, and his head was full of new ideas. When Elias returned home, he placed the heavy bucket beside his dry field and stood quietly for a moment. He suddenly realized that his biggest problem was not the land, or his luck, or his neighbor's success. His biggest problem was the emptiness inside him. The emptiness created by constant comparison, complaints, and his refusal to learn. In the following days, Elias began to act differently. He built small shades for his young plants, just as the young man had shown him. He set up barrels and clay pots to catch every drop of rain, as the old woman had done. He started turning leaves, peels, and old straw into rich compost, just like the family who had taught him. For the first time in a long while, he worked with patience instead of anger and with curiosity instead of jealousy. Weeks passed, and the season slowly changed. Little by little, fresh green leaves pushed through his soil. His field was still smaller and less perfect than his neighbor's, but it was alive. Elias noticed something else too. When he walked through his field now, his chest felt lighter, not heavier. One evening he met the old shepherd again on the same road. With a grateful smile, Elias said, "My field is still not the biggest, and I still have much to learn, but my bucket is no longer empty." The shepherd looked at the growing crops and replied, "Life doesn't change when your land becomes easier. It changes when your mind stops staying empty and starts being filled with wisdom and action." So, if your own life feels stuck, ask yourself, is the world truly unfair to you? Or is your bucket simply empty? You can keep kicking it and watching nothing change, or you can start filling it with new skills, small daily actions, and lessons from people around you. Every drop you collect today becomes the harvest you will walk through tomorrow.